Okay, President O'Brien, we are live now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zerbuck. I would like to call the regular meeting of the Deer Valley Unified School District Governing Board to order at 7:01 p.m. Let the record reflect, I believe I saw all board members present. And if you could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, Can we have a moment of silence? Thank you all. I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda with one change, and that would be to pull 6E for separate consideration after we do the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes 5-0. Can I have a motion for consent agenda, please? I'm sorry, finance reports. I skipped right past all the reports.
I skipped past all the cool stuff.
I was going to make the meeting really short this evening. I apologize. Preview of our 2022-2023 district calendar options. I believe that is Ms. Karen Myers.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Finch. Can you all hear me? Okay, you can all hear me. Okay. 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 Okay, I'm moving forward here. I'm here this evening to bring forward a discussion of the 2023 calendar. So I have, if we go to the next slide. Just to report, members of our calendar committee, we have 6 parents, 1 community member, 2 district administrators, 2 campus administrators, 3 certified employees, 2 classified employees, and I act as the facilitator. The purpose of the calendar committee is to discuss options for the 2023 calendar and bring recommendations to the board for review. We do not discuss staff development, early release days. Those days are determined by the district. Before we go to the 2023 calendar, I just want to review with you the 2021 calendar so you have it in your mind as we move forward. As you remember, we started school on August 3rd. We had September 7th, Labor Day off. September 28th coincided with Yom Kippur. We had October 12 and 13, a 4-day weekend. And I bring to your attention in the slide, we did a survey for those members who have joined the board in 2018, and we had like 6,000 responses, and the majority of patrons voted to have a 4-day fall break and also 1 week at Thanksgiving. And so as we look at the 2021 calendar, as you see in October, we had that 4-day fall break. And then when we moved into November with Veterans Day and then the week of Thanksgiving off this year, our typical 10 days at the winter holiday, and then our Martin Luther King and President's Day in January and February. March, we will have our spring break. April 2nd will be coincides with Good Friday, and we will be ending school May 20th, which will be the last day for students. In this calendar, we have 181 student contact days. In the following calendars as we go, we will be going back to 180 days, but in this calendar, we still have the 180 student contact days, and our semesters are equal by, well, 1 day, 90 in the first semester and 91 in the second. So that is the present calendar we are working with right now. So if we move on to next year, 21-22, which was adopted last year, it basically mirrors our 2021 calendar, starting school Monday, August 2nd. September 6 and 7 are a 4-day weekend because that coincided with Rosh Hashanah that year. And then we have a 4-day weekend in October. Veterans Day, the week of Thanksgiving. The only change in our winter break is the district has asked to put in a staff development day, and they wanted it attached to the winter break for academic reasons. And if you want any more explanation, Dr. Galligan can certainly tell you that. Our Martin Luther King President's Day, March break, April 15th, and then we are ending school May 19th. So this calendar basically mirrors the 2021 calendar, and that was adopted last year. So moving on to the next slide, I do just like to bring to your attention kind of what other school districts are doing. I look at Peoria mainly because when we go to graduations, Peoria gets first choice at State Farm Stadium, so I tend to keep track of Peoria's calendars. But they do not have their 2023 up. Their 21-22 is starting August 4th, as you can see. They take the week of Thanksgiving. They have 11 days off for their winter break. They do not take Good Friday, but they are ending May 19th, Thursday, so they basically are mirroring us. We go down to Paradise Valley. They're consistent with their calendars. They are starting on August 10th or in 2023, August 9th. They do honor both Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in their calendars. Veterans Day, they do only take 3 days at Thanksgiving. 11 days usually for their winter break, and then they're consistent other than they are ending a little bit later by starting on the 10th. When they end late like this, I always like to bring it forth to you. It makes the semesters quite unequal. You take 5 days out of first semester, put it into second, and in essence, you have 10 extra days in your second semester. And our courses are based on semesters, and one of our priorities has been to keep those semesters equal. 2 other calendars, Glendale Union, starting Monday, they start a week later, and they basically are ending a week later. If you can just look over, they do a week for a fall break, only 2 days at Thanksgiving, and then they add in usually a staff development day, etc., over their winter break. They do not take Good Friday, ending May 25th. And then I couldn't find anybody else that has their 2023 calendar out. I think at this point, school districts are just kind of taking a little break, so we are moving forward to keep us on track. The considerations that we look for in the calendar are that it is student-centered. Dr. Finch and I met when we asked for graduation dates for 2023. Peoria chooses first, Tolleson second. We were third, and we selected May 18th and 19th of 2023. We are back to 180 student contact days, and I know the reason is they worked out the minutes of the day to compress it back to 180, but we also put back in the staff development day into the calendar. We watched the second and third Wednesday of October to make sure we're in school for PSAT testing. Per the survey, we're bringing forth calendars to you with a 1 week off at Thanksgiving, ending the first semester before winter break, holding a staff development on January 2nd, tagging it on to the winter break, balancing the days of the semester, balancing the days off per semester, balancing our holidays. At this time, we are taking one Jewish religious holiday in the fall, Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, and the Christian holidays, Christmas and Good Friday. We try to consider implications of start and end days and holidays on attendance and working parents. So moving on, we are bringing you two options that for consideration this evening. When I met with the committee, we had quite a lengthy discussion about looking at the early start. We have gotten up to the beginning of August. Part of that is because of that 2018 survey. When you put 4 days for a break in October and you put a week at Thanksgiving, it naturally is going to push the beginning of school opening sooner. And I think sometimes our patrons forget that. They just look at the beginning date and go, oh my gosh, it's so early. And we did spend quite a bit of time talking about that. And so we have brought you two calendars that we found a day or two to offer and still keep things equal. So calendar A, if we look, starting on Wednesday, August 3rd, taking Labor Day, September 26th, coincides with our Jewish holiday. In this calendar, we only put just Columbus Day in for a fall break so that we could start school a day later. We have November, Veterans Day, the full week off. We then have our 10-day break, and actually students will get 11 because we have the staff development day set on January 2nd, Martin Luther King and President's Day, spring break, April 7th, ending school, and this is how we got our one extra day up there to start on the 3rd. On Friday the 19th will be the last day for students. Teachers would return on Monday, May 22nd. This calendar, if you look up at the top, has 89 days in the first semester and 91 days in the second. It's just slightly adjusted. So that is option A. And I can tell you that option A had 10 committee members preferred this option. So if we look at option B, it simply adjusts by a day, starting 1 day later, August 4th. Same holidays in September. It does have a 4-day weekend in October. Same November, same December, same January, February, March, and April. Looking at the end of school, it moves down to ending school on Tuesday, May 23rd. That's how we got the days at the beginning of the calendar. This option has 87 days in the first semester and 93 in the second. So it is a little bit adjusted slightly. And I had 5 members of the committee preferred this option. And so with that in mind, that is what I am here to report this evening. May I answer any questions for you?
Thank you, Mrs. Myers. Do board members have any questions?
Ms. O'Brien, if you could hold just 1 second. Go ahead, Ms. O'Brien.
Okay, board members, does anybody have any question? If you could just turn on, Mrs. Fisher, do you have any questions?
I do. Well, a couple of them. It would be very helpful if we could actually see the presentation here in the WebEx. Is the public able to see what the presentation was aside from in the board doc? So they're seeing it in the reporting? Okay.
Yes.
And then repeatedly the district has been short on their time. We've gotten dinged repeatedly over the years for not having adequate seat time. Is there any padding in these to ensure that we do have enough seat time? Because we've repeatedly been fined for not having it. And that's not a new occurrence. It's happened multiple years within the last 5 years. So are we sure that we have adequate seat time to meet state requirements?
I can take that.
I will refer this over to someone else to speak to it.
President O'Brien and Ms. Fisher, a few years ago, our school board approved a change that will begin next year where our senior students must take 4 courses their senior year, which has not been the case in Deer Valley. And part of our instructional minutes challenge, in fact, the vast majority of it, is that we had students, many, who were not taking the full course load their senior year. And that is part of where we had our challenge. Next year, all students, their senior year, will be taking that 4 course requirement. And based on our calculations, we have enough instructional minutes with all students taking that minimum of 4 courses.
Do you have any other questions, Mrs. Fisher? Okay, Mrs. Ordway?
This is, Karen, this is not going to be for you. It's about your calendar, not for you. I'm just wondering, the majority of students, do they end on the last day of school? So we have one calendar ending on a Friday and one, I think you said, is ending on a Tuesday. So would the majority of students be having that Friday or Tuesday as the last day?
Yes, they would. The last day on option A for students is Friday, May 19th. The last day in option B would be Tuesday, May 23rd. So all students would be expected to be at school on those days.
So the only ones that wouldn't,
Half a day for students.
right, and what I was getting at is we've got 8th grade in high school, so I'm just wondering how that would work with that. Maybe Dr. Galligan can give me a...
I'm not quite sure what you're asking as far as it's the same as we always have done in our previous calendars. We have a half a day of school whenever the last day is is noted. Normally, the last day is on a Thursday, a half day for the last day for students, and then teachers return on Friday. In either of these calendars, that is the one drawback. In order to start school later by a couple days, we had to find where to put those days, and the committee as well as cabinet came forth with that we could in school on Friday for students, which would be okay with parents, and that the teachers on the committee were okay with coming back on Monday. They felt that would be okay. And then in option B, that we have 2 days for students that hopefully they would attend. And they're taking, high school has exams. So it was the thought of the committee and cabinet that yes, students would attend those last 2 days, even though they were a Monday or Tuesday.
So the second calendar, Monday would be a full day for those students that aren't done, 8th graders and perhaps some of the high school students, and then they would come back for a half day on the Tuesday. Whereas the calendar A, the last half day and last day of school would be a Friday, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And if you do note on the bottom, graduations would be on the 18th and 19th in option A, as those are the days we have scheduled at the stadium. They would still be in option B on the 18th and 19th, but we've done that before. And on those days, the high schools that are graduating do have a half day, but like in our 2022 calendar, we're going to graduate on Monday, Tuesday, and in school on Thursday. It is something we have to adjust depending on when we do get the stadium. But these are workable calendars from that standpoint.
And as always, I appreciate the work done on the calendar, and thank you for the clarifications.
Thank you.
Mrs. Paperman, do you have questions?
So far, to me, as a teacher, the calendar seems reasonable. I know as a teacher, we look forward for that fall break and spring break.
Okay, thank you so much. Mrs. Reed?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, I have just a couple. And I think this might be a Dr. Galligan question. When will teachers be required, when will staff be required to come back based on option A and option B?
In most years, staff, teachers, continuing teachers, return 3 days before the first day of the school year. With results-based funding, we have been able to increase that by 1 day with results-based funding for our certified staff. So it would be, for the 22-23 school year, we would not know that information yet about results-based funding. That would be coming out, I would imagine, next year, if results-based funding will continue after the initial 3 years. So you can always plan for 3 days before the first day, and then potentially with results-based funding, an additional day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Galligan. Okay, that's the only question I have. And if Mrs. Myers, you would please pass on the governing board's gratitude to the committee's work, we would greatly appreciate that. Thank you for being with us this evening to present.
Thank you. I will do that. My pleasure.
Okay. Now we're going to move on to finance reports. And for that, we would have Mrs. Heather Mock.
Good evening, President O'Brien, members of the board, and guests with us online. We're going to start this evening with the enrollment report to end January of 2021. We don't have much new information to present. We haven't seen a large change since the end of December. We are still down 5.2% from this time last year, which equates to about 1,755 students. Our current enrollment is 32,215. We do still see a large amount of students in our online program as well, with over 2,800 in our K through 8 program and more than 440 in our 9 through 12 program. Other than that, if there are any questions, I will be happy to answer them at this time.
Board members, are there any questions for Mrs. Mock? Hearing none, please go on to your next report, Mrs. Mock.
The next report we have for you this evening is the M&O budget report ending January as well. If you take a look, one of the most noticeable, sorry, just trying to pull it up here as well. One of the most noticeable items that you will see is on the very bottom right-hand corner, we've got the cell that is our projected carry forward. Normally our report isn't quite this busy, but we have added additional lines this year for the December budget revision and the additional budget reductions that are potentially expected between now and May 15th, which is when we're required to have our final budget revision. We are expecting, as of when we'll see if I can say this. When we presented the report in January for December, we were projecting a negative budget carry forward of about $4.4 million. At this time, we're projecting an additional $1 million available carry forward from our certified staff contracts. So that overall amount has decreased from $4.4 million to $3.4 million. We do need to remind you that this does not have several considerations in place. So when we say we're going to have additional budget changes between now and 15, they will include the use of our ESSER 1 funds, our elementary and secondary schools emergency relief funds of about $3.6 million. We have used a little bit of that, but we're really trying to hold on to that to make sure that we can backfill any holes in our maintenance and operation budget so that we're not carrying forward a negative amount. In addition, the $14.2 million that you'll see just above and to the left of the 3.4 million negative number, those are the potential budget adjustments. That includes a full over $8 million reduction in our budget due to the distance learning. And just to give everyone online a refresher, the distance learning reductions that were made by the state back in November were based on the percent of time we spent in distance learning for our first 40 days. In Deer Valley, we spent 99.1% of our time in distance learning for all of our students in our first 40 days. However, since then, we have had much more in-person learning for the district for our brick and mortar students. What that means is the state projected 99% of our funding should be reduced by 5% because our distance learning is being funded the same as an online instruction program. So there's lots of numbers, lots of percents, but when we consider that the total distance learning 5% reduction is actually going to be based off of our full 181 days for our calendar. So even though we were 99.1% for the first 40 days, we loosely project that for the entire 181 days, we'll be about 35% distance learning for those brick and mortar students. So once we get to April, which is when the state is expecting the new percent distance learning report, we will see that $14.2 million reduced, and we should actually begin to see some carry forward in the next few months. And with that, I will take any questions.
Do any board members have questions? Hearing none, we will move on to our return to school report from Dr. Zerbach and other cabinet members.
Okay, good evening, President O'Brien, members of the board, Dr. Finch. As it always has been and will continue to be, it's our pleasure to present to you the return to school report this evening. Okay, for those in the community that do not know, we have 3 work teams that have been working on the return to school aspects since early summer. And so in these reports, we present out updates from these 3 work teams, which are return to school safely, return to school learning, and return to work safely. This is a quick overview of the topics that we will address today. From return to school, the focus will be on the vaccine. For return to learning, a focus on the group that is working for those students who are struggling. And then return to work safely, we'll provide an update on staffing. Okay, starting again with return to school safely, we were super pleased at our turnout for the vaccination event at Barry Goldwater in Boulder Creek High School this past Friday and Saturday. We provided vaccines for approximately 1,500 educators and support staff. As a reminder, this event was not only for staff in Deer Valley Unified, but also for all educator and support staff in our geographic footprint. So whether they were at the public schools here in Deer Valley, charter schools, private schools, or daycares, we provided that service to them. We partnered with Fry's, Safeway, Albertsons, and Maricopa County in order to provide this service. And there were so many folks to thank. There's really too many for me to thank, but I did want to publicly highlight a few folks. First of all, Val Bullis, who's in the picture there. Val really and truly operated a command team for the past 5 weeks, getting things going for this event, and she did a great job. We also had fantastic support from our district facilities team and also the campus facilities teams for this event. Our nurses were fantastic, IS&T, our campus administrations, and so we just could not have held this event without the support of all of these folks. Here are a few pictures from the event. You can see in the middle various campus administrators that came out to support the first station when folks come in. We also see our facilities team that were very busy putting up the various tents that we needed, both at the start and at the end. On the picture all the way to the left, you can see what it looked like at Barry Goldwater when we started, is we had lots of folks that came to get the vaccine. Then you can see one of our APs there, Tim Yates. He was excited to get his card, and that is also the one and only Miss Mock that is there as well with her vaccination card. At Boulder Creek, again, we had a very smooth event. Mr. Warner, he managed that event at that campus, and we had nothing but positive feedback from folks who went through the event. So very pleased with that. So for those who are aware, that was our first dose that we provided this past weekend. But the COVID-19 vaccine requires 2 doses right now. And so that second dose will be administered Friday, March the 12th. As I have informed you in a couple of different occasions in the Friday board update, I am looking at doing a calendar change for that particular day to ensure that we have the capacity to get all of our staff vaccinated. I'm nailing down the details for that this week and look to provide that to you in a board update, perhaps as early as this Friday with the final call. Also, as we did the first time, we'll continue looking for some sponsors to provide food to us. I didn't mention that in the previous slide, but we did have many community members that gave us a call and said they would love to help sponsor that event. And so we had great sponsorships for that. So we'll continue doing that for the Friday, the March 12th. And then we'll also look at providing additional communication to our staff this week regarding that event. Okay, on a somewhat related note, we also continue to offer free COVID-19 testing. So if you will recall, when we came back from our winter break, we provided testing on a frequent basis at Barry Goldwater. Now that students are in session, we have shifted the location of that testing to our district office. That testing will occur each Wednesday throughout the month of February from noon to 5. We have a very friendly URL, the dvusd.org/COVID testing, where parents and anyone from the community, including our staff, can go in there and they can find out the information that they need in order to get that free COVID-19 test. So again, we encourage folks to take advantage of this opportunity that we have at a convenient location and also at no cost. And we'll continue to do that. Okay, and with that, I am going to pass it to my partner, Mr. Miglarino, who will give us an update on the community level of transmission metrics. Jim.
Good evening, President O'Brien and governing board members. As we report, Maricopa County does provide dashboard metrics for schools each Thursday. So this is the report from February 4th. And the numbers are, they are improving. I think all three metrics are decreased in their value. So they improved from their previous weeks. And this reporting period is from January 10th through January 23rd is the data that's used to create these metrics. The first two metrics are specific to our district. The third metric that we'll look to is a county-wide metric. The case count is decreased again significantly, not quite as significant as last week, but now we have 2 weeks of decline. And is still above the substantial threshold, but 2 weeks of decline is also a measurement that the county health wants used to be able to determine if the case count would continue to be in the substantial or moderate range. I think we still need to see some more improvement before we can claim that that is out of the substantial range, but it's at least heading in the right direction. The second metric here is rate of positivity. A slight improvement on positivity rate, it obviously has a long way to go before it's above or below the substantial threshold, which is, as you can see there, could be less than 5% or 2 weeks below the 7% threshold. But again, we're seeing that the rate is coming down, which is a positive indication. And again, because the time period is a couple weeks after the holidays, that's why we're seeing some of these improvements. The third measure, which is on the next slide, is the COVID-like illness. It also improved and is approaching getting out of the substantial threshold, which is less than 10%, is now at 10.3%. In previous reports, we'd also been sharing R0, but R0 is no longer being calculated. The last look at the R0 for Arizona, it was below 1. It was about 0.96, meaning that the illness was, or the virus was not spreading exponentially. But we will also look at the 7-day epi curve that the Maricopa County produces. And you can see the downward trend, which is the data that we were looking at in terms of creating that short-term virtual environment coming back to the start of this spring semester, knowing that we needed a little bit more time for the virus to no longer be spreading as it was due to the holidays. So we will continue to be monitoring this metric to make sure that there aren't any other modifications we need to do to any mitigating factors that we have as a district. I'll turn it back over to Dr. Z.
Thank you, Mr. Miglarino. Also, as I mentioned in the previous governing board meeting, we do continue to provide parent webinars on topics that are pertinent in this day and age with the pandemic. In January, we had the parenting and social media webinar, which had a specific theme of the pandemic in it as well. If a parent or a community member was not able to access that live webinar, they can access the recording, and we have provided that link there. We will continue to provide that link in some of our Monday parent updates. But I highly, highly encourage all parents to take a look and listen into that webinar. Again, it features Katie McPherson, who we have used in the past, and she truly has a wealth of knowledge and tips for our parents as far as how they can help their students manage screen time and also thrive in a digital world. Very important content. Again, encouraging all community members who are viewing tonight to take a look at that link if they haven't done so already. Okay, also with Return to School Safely, we are aware that some folks are beginning to inquire about the spring events. We are having some of those conversations right now with our Return to School Safely subwork team. That subwork team is comprised mostly of principals in our district at all three levels, at the elementary, middle, and high school level. And so that team will continue to meet, and we will have more to share out in upcoming board updates and governing board meetings. Okay, and with that, I would ask Ms. Smock to come on and give a report on PPE. Ms. Smock.
Thank you, Dr. Zarabak. President O'Brien, members of the board, and guests online, I am pleased to now talk to you about the PPE that we have been providing to our schools and departments. I really had to include the picture of the Lysol wipes that we received recently from a donation. We received over 3,100 canisters, but if you notice the name of the scent that we received, it is Brand New Day. And so we were happy to send thousands of Brand New Days out to all of our campuses. I think the last of them will be received this week. I got a call from a campus who received theirs just today and was very excited about those Lysol wipes. We also, most recently, since we spoke to you at the last board meeting, our biggest challenge was actually providing the PPE for the volunteers for the February 5th and 6th vaccination event. And we have enough on hand for the ALS department to provide all of the PPE for the event on March 10th or March 12th as well. Otherwise, I did have the opportunity to visit several schools as they were coming back last month and ask principals directly about PPE. And I'm happy to report that the folks that I spoke with had what they needed. Anytime a student asked for a mask, they had plenty to be able to give to those students. But we do continue to provide and deliver PPE, masks, hand sanitizer, and air purifiers as needed and upon request for all of our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Mock. I know it was a brand new day for me when I saw those wipes as well, when they came in the boxes. Okay, with that, we'll have Mr. Miglerino with an update for return to school safely and transportation. Mr. Miglerino.
We wanted to share some information that was asked of us regarding transportation. So just this week, the Transportation Security Administration provided a directive requiring face masks be worn on all public transportation and that a notice of that requirement be posted. So we are in the process of providing on all of our buses in both English and Spanish of that requirement. In conversations with Mr. Mesa, our Director of Transportation, he informs me that compliance has been, most of our riders have been very cooperative and they have not had a compliance issue, but this new requirement does have us posting the signage on all of our buses. We also received a question regarding route coverage. We still continue to have vacant bus driving positions that we're working to fill. And in the event we have too many people that don't show up on a particular day, we do have to collapse some routes. We do provide notice to the schools. The schools do provide notice to the appropriate people, whether it's staff or the parents, depending on whether the routes are coming to school or are returning the kids to their homes. When that happens, we typically take other buses that are in the proximity and collapse those routes together. It generally ends up with the buses running about 10 to 15 minutes late, whether that's arrival to the school, if it was an AM route or a PM route going home, could be as much as 15 minutes late if that has happened. That has happened on a number of occasions, so it's not an unusual occurrence. So I didn't want to just gloss over it either. And then finally, the question regarding contact tracing. Riders or passengers are, when we do contact tracing, if we have a positive case, that's done by the assigned seating charts that we have for each route, as well as the video recordings. All of our buses have digital video recording, so we can use that as a follow-up to be able to make sure any contact tracing that is staff generated, we are very thankful to have human resources be able to assist with the transportation folks if there was a positive case within our transportation department.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Next up, we have Dr. Galligan with Return to Learning, who has an update with one of the very important sub-work teams, the Student Achievement, Student Success Intervention and Work Team. Dr. Galligan.
President O'Brien, members of the board, and online guests. I mentioned at the last board meeting we had a grade 7-12 work team that will make recommendations to our schools on how best to help students with both lost learning and lost credit. The team reviewed student failure data at middle school and high school. There were many observations and questions asked that we will follow up with this week at our next meeting. For example, one question asked was, what is the usual failure rate for both middle and high school in a typical year? Other questions included, how many students failed multiple subjects? How are these Fs being earned? Lack of participation, not handing in work, not taking assessments, or students completing the work but still failing. How do we influence student motivation? There is the ultimate question. We all would like to have the answer to how we can best motivate our kids. And then how can we guide and support teachers on appropriate instructional methods that support intensive efforts for academic recovery both in summer and coming years? The team had some amazing questions, and I know we will be able to work our way through those. Our task is to balance recovering lost learning and filling in learning gaps with recovering lost credits and failing grades. These are two sides of the same coin, but both have unique considerations when working with children. Okay? As we work through an 18-month framework, we will identify and implement many different strategies to support students who have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. Deer Valley is known for excellence in student learning, and any strategy we identify will have a high level of integrity to the learning process, so we will have graduates who are well prepared for post-secondary education and/or the workforce even during the pandemic. We will have further details on this work team in March once the team completes its initial work, and at that time, we will begin a similar team for our K-6 children. Moving on, the summer programming team met last Friday to begin determining what programming is needed based on, again, our student data. The team reviewed K-6 middle school and high school student data, mainly the number of failure rates, to set a lens for possible summer programs in 2021. We are currently grouping them into 3 categories that you see here. Each identified program will have 2 major considerations. Will it provide students with recovered credit or grades, or not? And will it be a free or no fee? Will it be a free or no fee based summer program, enrichment program, or intervention program, or will there be fees involved? As I mentioned, our enrichment programs and intervention type programs will not have a recaptured credit or failing grade component, as their role is to enhance student learning experiences and attack lost learning through intervention opportunities. The third category you see here has programs that directly work to help students earn passing grades for courses they may have failed last spring or this past fall. Our goal is to have summer programs identified and be ready to begin planning in March. As you saw, one of the team's tasks to determine on the previous slide is to determine which programs will be fee-based and which will be free. Part of the work by the team will be to complete a cost analysis for each program. Ms. Mock is part of this team, and she provided a picture of possible funding for summer academic programs. Unfortunately, we are tied to the legislator's timeline for some of these funding sources, which could impact some of our summer program offerings and definitely our planning. Okay. As you may or may not know, switching to another area, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Deer Valley needed to accelerate technology and instructional supports for this current year. In preparation for the 2021 school year, the district took efforts to realize the distribution of one-to-one student devices and designated the Canvas LMS as the learning platform for instructional delivery, K-12. This was a huge change for our elementary. As a result of the health pandemic, Deer Valley started the school year in a virtual learning format for all students and anticipated movement of students throughout the year between online and on campus. With many of our K-8 educators being new to having one-to-one devices and using Canvas as their learning management system, we identified the need to support teachers with instructional content for delivery online. While other districts chose to purchase curricular products, Deer Valley chose to maintain use of our existing board-adopted resources and curriculum guides. To do so while also providing support for teachers for online course delivery and establishing structures to support students shifting between learning models, whether they were in person, at home, online, whichever way it was. Deer Valley embarked on course building, starting with K-6 courses and special area courses, and then expanding to grade 7-8 courses and other unique intervention and special population support courses. Grades 9-12 are not included in this year's course building effort since internally developed content already existed for the 9-12 courses offered through Deer Valley's online learning program, or DVULP. This core content was made available for high school teachers to reference and utilize. Additionally, worth noting, Deer Valley's high schools are multiple years into having one-to-one student devices and utilizing Canvas as their learning management systems to support instructional delivery. In December, our K-8 teachers, brick and mortar and Deer Valley online learning teachers, were surveyed to share reflections on the DVUSD K-8 Canvas course content. Our goal in gathering input is to strengthen future course builds and drive revisions to existing content for continued use with our Deer Valley students. As you will see here, our ratings had a 0, 1, 2, or 3. We had 183 surveys submitted with 297 responses received on unique content and grade levels. Respondents were asked about a single course and grade and then provided the option to add additional areas to their response. In the left chart, you will see ratings from teachers indicating that the content provided through course builds is above average quality in all aspects evaluated. Additionally, improvement was noted from Q1 to Q2 in the areas of course design, lesson structure, student activities, and overall quality. In the right chart, ratings were submitted for each content area within each of the specified aspects, including grade level specific responses. Here are the overall quality ratings for each content area from Q1 to Q2. All content areas were rated at or above average quality in Q2, with 5 of the 7 content areas earning a higher rating in the second quarter. We have been quick to implement improvements to the process throughout this year and expect each quarter to have increasingly higher outcomes. Each course build will also undergo a revision cycle prior to the 2021-22 school year. The ratings on the elements of the course builds will help guide the work of our content area teams. The teams will complete fourth quarter course building in March. We're very close to being done with 4 quarters. However, we will then begin the task of identifying necessary updates and revisions for next school year. You may not know who these course building teachers are, but they span grade levels, schools, and departments. In my mind, they are some of Deer Valley's greatest heroes this year, working tirelessly to ensure we have a product for the online academy students and teachers in our brick and mortars, for students and teachers across our district, regardless of how students are participating in their learning, in person or online. Here are just a few quotes. You can see the top one is from a 2nd grade teacher. Below that, a 7th grade teacher. Underneath that, a 5th grade teacher, and underneath that, a 6th grade teacher. Now, I'm not here to say that everything has been rosy across our course building. As you all know, we've had our challenges, our ups and downs, but overall, when we look at what we started with in July to where we are mid-year, we feel confident that we will only continue to get better, and our teachers overall have appreciated having that resource available to them, for them, and for their kids. Okay, Gary? The team will complete fourth quarter course building in March, as I said. We will then begin identifying any of those updates, and here what you will see is the recommendations that we received in December, and that we will begin, if we've not already started, to incorporate into our course building. I just can say that I give a shout out to Michelle Coots, Chelsea Landingham, and Cheney Harding, who have been the trio of educators who have led us on this journey. And the 3 of them have kept us on pace and are truly continuous learners, because it's their work that has helped us continue to improve our courses for teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan.
Oh, Dr. Zerb, one last thing. that I just wanted to mention. You'll see here on the right side that over the course of this year, we have built 89 unique K-8 courses. In a typical year with DVOLP, we would be lucky to have built 5 courses. 89 is an astounding number. There are 224 course builders over this year, and we have impacted through our K-8 online courses 20,931 children. That's pretty spectacular. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan. I think we all would agree that it's simply #extraordinary what those folks did and continue to do with respect to the learning pieces. Okay, next up is return to work with Jenna Moffett. Jenna.
Good evening, President O'Brien and governing board members. Just 3 quick things this evening. First, I'm going to review the staffing timeline. There's been one update to that timeline and our anticipated contract timeline, as well as reporting reminders. So our first slide outlines our timeline for certified staffing. We can go to that next slide. Initially, I shared with you that we anticipated starting on February 15th. That is a holiday, so we have adjusted our timeline 1 day back. February 16th, which is next Tuesday, will begin our certified staffing process for next school year. So we are still holding our staffing meetings, and we'll conclude those at the end of this week. And we'll support all of our campuses as we move through 2 rounds. If you recall the last governing board meeting, I shared with you that close to the last decade, we have practiced 1 internal round, and we are going to do 2 full rounds before we open positions up to the outside. And that is so that we provide time for all of our certified employees to adjust or have the time to adjust for before we open up to the outside. That won't mean, of course, that they don't have opportunities past that when positions become available. We also will anticipate placing all of those that have not found a position the week of or during the week of March 5th. And then also a reminder that all of our employees per the MOU will move back for staffing purposes to their original positions that they started in at the beginning of this year as we surplus and navigate into next year. And then our anticipated contract timeline is on the next slide. Today, the board is aware that we are bringing contract language for approval later in today's meeting. We will also be bringing to you February 23rd or March 2nd, more likely February 23rd, our initial contract renewal list for all groups that do qualify for contracts. And then we met with all relevant parties this last week, and we do still plan to issue contracts during the week of March 8th. Our hope is that we can actually hit the go button and that those contracts publish on March 10th. That is our hope, so that it gives us a couple of days for employees to review and ask questions if they have any before we do move into spring break, rather than employees viewing contracts on that Friday and then needing to wait through spring break for any questions that they do have. Again, this is our draft timeline and anticipated timeline. And then lastly, always, we need to remind all of our employees to please follow this guidance when it comes to reporting COVID. Go to covidreport.dvusd.org, and we ask again to please make sure that all of our employees who are not feeling well, that they not report to work and instead contact Human Resources, and we will walk them through their next steps. The same thing, if any of our employees learn that they have come in close contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19, should not report to work and instead contact Human Resources, and we will walk them through their next steps. That's all we have for you this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Moffett. And with that, President O'Brien, our return to school report has concluded. We can field questions.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbach. Mrs. Paperman, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do have a question. Thank you for presenting the return to school safely. Would it be possible if we can add like another page so we can see the current active COVID-19 cases by schools to visualize it and also to share with the community.
President O'Brien, Ms. Haberman, yes, that is available at www.dvusd.org/dashboard.
Yes, but we will be able to present it because the return to school safely, we're presenting this every time we meet during board meetings. So it will be fantastic if we also had a page that can bring us update where the current active COVID-19 cases are by schools.
Yes, thank you for sharing that.
Do you have any other questions, Mrs. Paperman?
Yeah, that's all the question. It would be great if we can, since we're doing this every time we meet, if we can also share that in the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Yes, I think. Oh, okay. Mrs. Fisher, do you have any questions?
I do have a couple that are probably more specific, and I debated whether I put them here or put them at the end in my comments. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a couple of them here because I don't want them to get lost in board reports. One of them is a concern that parents have expressed, parents with special needs kids. I mean, all kids are being allowed additional time to answer when assignments are due through Zoom and whatnot. But, you know, in IEPs, kids have additional time written in. And that extra time is beyond what it would take the typical child to complete the assignments. And that is being denied. Or that's what's been reported. So are we taking any steps in our return to school to address our special needs students? That's question one. Question two, and I believe the whole board had received a email from a parent whose concern was that her child has allergies and is repeatedly being sent home with allergies as if they were COVID. And so are we doing anything to address the reasonability of what we're doing? And then the third is like we all received regarding the Valentines. Is there any plans to bring some reason into what we're doing with COVID? It somehow is reasonable that our kids can play sports or that our parents can donate snacks for our teachers. However, our kindergartner cannot exchange a Valentine. We are seriously damaging the social emotional behaviors of life of our children. Are there any plans to bring a little bit more reasonableness to this? Because kids only get one youth. They get one chance to be a kid, and we're taking it away. So those are my three questions for our return to school, for whoever wants to take them.
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, the first question, Melissa, do you want to take that?
Dr. Zurbach, do we have Dr. McCusker?
Okay. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Melissa's computer, so we're going to get that figured out.
It has now been remedied, Dr. Zurbach.
Oh, okay, all right.
Good evening, governing board members, President Ordway, and other members. Thank you for your question, governing board members. In reference to students on IEPs, for each student on an IEP, we need to be cognizant of the fact that each student is unique. And so the learning plans that have been identified for each unique student, whether it be an accommodation for additional time that Ms. Fisher had identified, or an additional accommodation, that is unique for each student. So assuring that each IEP team is aware of that and the communication is happening is something that we have absolutely moved forward with in Deer Valley Unified School District in reference to providing services. If there is ever a concern, they are more than welcome to reach out to the special education strategist on the school site and/or student support services, and we'd be happy to remedy any of those concerns. But we do actively engage in conversations with all of our school teams.
Thank you, Melissa. And then with respect to the next two questions, as far as the allergy piece goes, our nurses do a great job managing that situation in a very challenging environment. So please, just if you can send me the name of that particular parent, we can certainly reach out and see if there's something we can do. And then with respect to the Valentine's Day piece, thank you for sharing that. We have a return to school team that meets and made that decision a couple of weeks ago.
I understand they made that decision, but that's what I'm saying. Is there anything we can do about bringing some reasonableness in these random decisions? They are, what is it? What's the legal term? Capricious. They're arbitrary and capricious decisions. Is there a standard that is being set at the district office? Because like I said, to me, it's illogical that a kid can't bring in a Valentine for their buddy, but they can bring in snacks for the teachers for, teacher conferences. There's just some serious concerns with things like that. Are we doing anything to change that type of behavior? And is there anything, what does the district need from our constituents, from our parents, with their child to make sure that they are not repeatedly being sent home for non-COVID, COVID-like illnesses? Because that, like I said, that could be just an allergy. Is there anything we can share with our community for their most precious item, which is their child? We should not be having arbitrary decisions. Is there a rubric or a method or something that we can help them to address these?
Yeah, President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, I guess I would disagree with the characterization of it being arbitrary. The committee uses, or the work team, I should say, really looks at all the different perspectives that are out there, and we use the guidance from Maricopa County with respect to that, and so we use those when we make our decisions for that.
Can we at least print out what those rules are then? So that our parents at least have something to go by, snacks in the form of goldfish are okay, cards printed out with hearts are not, or what have you. I'm really looking, I know I'm being a little bit sarcastic because I'm just really flabbergasted by the what's happening. But I think if we gave our community some guidelines, it may help.
Is it just sniffles with the fever? Is it, what three conditions?
The same thing with the conditions, what's the difference between an allergy versus the other? Because a kid has a sniffle. Is it an allergy? Is it COVID? Is it a flu? Is it a cold? Do we have anything printed with standards that our community can have?
Yes, absolutely. Folks in the community can go to our website, the dvusd.org/return to school. We have really a wealth of information that's on the website. We have our plan, which is there, which has many of those pieces that you requested. It has our protocols there. So that's where I would go for that particular information.
Dr. Zerbach, if I might request that you put those links in the Friday update so the board members have them fully. I believe that some of what we were, what Mrs. Fisher might be referring that falls under CDC, some of it falls under Maricopa County. Additionally, I think that as we all know, I should not have said that. Additionally, during the pandemic, we have worked very hard to ensure Deer Valley students had an option to come back in person, and we have had to be flexible given the year we have had. So I think it would be helpful if you could provide us all with that information or the links directly to those information that you're talking about, Dr. Zerbach. Would that be helpful, Mrs. Fisher?
I mean, we can provide it. What I'm really looking for, Ms. O'Brien, is do we have consistency throughout our district? I understand we have to do what we have to do to make sure that we're able to operate. But when a card can carry COVID, but a bag of goldfish cannot. When a pair of regular shoes cannot, tennis shoes cannot versus something else. And what I'm looking for is consistency and application. And it may or may not be in those links. I will look more. I've only, you can only research so much in a week. I was traveling all last week. So I'll look more. But
I think that it would be helpful then for Dr. Zerbach to provide that. I understand what you are looking for. I think thus far, if you could also provide in that update, Dr. Zerbach, I don't think there was a change in policy. I think there was a miscommunication regarding Valentine's. I think that we have not had any classroom parties all year.
Well, and that was kind of my point, Ms. O'Brien, is that it's a classroom party not being allowed, a classroom Valentine not being allowed, but parents in the same week getting a note saying, please donate snacks for your teachers. We love our teachers, absolutely. But do you see where that, and that's what I'm hearing from our community, is that how is a snack being sent in for a teacher okay, but a Valentine card not okay? And so
I think the committee should look at that. Absolutely, right. They should look at that. Okay.
That's what I'm looking for is consistency.
Perfect. Mrs. Reed?
Hi, I have a couple of questions for Mrs. Moffett regarding staffing. In regards to staffing our online program, I know that at first our teachers who needed ADA accommodations were moved online. And I know that with our MOU that we approved that they would go back to the school that they originated from at the beginning of the school year. Is there separate consideration going to be made for them for next year? In case they aren't feeling comfortable teaching in class. And then is there any consideration given to online teachers that are currently teaching in the online academy who want to remain in the online academy instead of going back to their brick and mortar school?
President O'Brien, Ms. Reed, those are good questions and questions that we have gotten quite often in the last couple of weeks. So your first question, all of our employees that are in DVOA because of an ADA reason, each one of their accommodation plans, it specifically states that it will conclude, that accommodation will conclude at the end of this contract year. And it will be reviewed again as part of the normal ADA process. So each of those employees who have disclosed their disability and information, this is normal ADA process. We will invite them back to another interactive meeting to either close out their ADA plan if they don't feel that they need it any longer, or to see what their new needs may be. And there are a lot of conversation around this with our attorneys through ASPA and from district to district right now. And we will be making some of these decisions moving forward. The reason we aren't making them now is we aren't quite sure where we will be in another couple of months with the vaccine in place. We know that some of our employees will feel more confident and not feel that they need such an accommodation. The other part of it is our availability. The ADA process always includes whether or not the employer has the ability to provide such an accommodation. So these positions next year, and this is as of today, and this could change, so I always have to put that disclaimer out there. These positions next year, this year they are full-time online. They can be done full-time from home. And next year, that won't be the case necessarily. As of today, that won't be the case. Preferably, the DVOA and DVOLP would like to have their teachers at a brick and mortar location at least 3 days a week so that they do have the capacity to provide one-to-one support to students that do want to show up for any conferencing or support, as DVOLP teachers have in the past. So again, that is today's plan moving forward. The second part of your question was any teachers that are already in DVOA or DVOLP and were moved there through probably either ADA or even through the surplus process, would they have the option to get to stay? They have the option to apply to move over there for the next school year. So the DVOA campus will be fully vacated through the MOU. Everyone does go back to their original positions. Those positions at DVOA will post online with all other open positions across our system. Next Tuesday starts first reassignment postings, and then transfer postings will soon follow after that, and DVOA will be included. So they do have the opportunity to interview to become it'll be more of a permanent position than it was this year.
Thank you so much. That's all, Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you. Mrs. Ordway?
Hi, and thank you, everybody, for all your information. I have just a couple of questions. With trying to keep separate, we have, I'm just wondering how or if it's impacted PE and the 2 recesses for the grades that is applicable for. If we're, doing fine with that, just asking. And then the second one is, I know that normally we do have the seating charts on the buses. I'm not sure that they're always, followed, but maybe now, during this time they are. I'm just wondering how we account for the students when we have to compress the route. And that's my 2 questions.
And Ms. Ordway, the first question, was there another question before when you asked, are the campuses doing okay with the 2 recesses? I couldn't hear if there was another question there.
Yes, I asked about PE, because I know that PE sometimes was sometimes in multipurpose room. I was just interested in how we're dealing with that, seeing as we have quite a couple of different configurations for it.
Sure. So with respect to the first question regarding PE and the 2 recesses, I believe that we are doing fine with those. I know that folks are being creative in terms of the spacing at times, but yes, I believe we're doing fine. And then with respect to the seating charts on the buses, Jim, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I'm not sure I understood the question fully. I think what I heard you say is that how do we account for the students when we collapse a route? And we do have the information about who is being picked up that we share with the drivers, so the drivers know where to go to be able to get the other students. So there's a lot of cooperation and coordination that takes into place when we do have to collapse a route. And I don't want to say we're getting good at it, because that might speak to the frequency. But thanks to the hardworking staff in transportation and our bus drivers and our dispatch folks, we are able to do that. And unfortunately, it's become more frequent than we would like.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, I did ask about the seating chart because I know like the regular route, you would have it as that bus driver, but I was just wondering if, so, you know, how they got the information. Because sometimes the route might compress, you know, like that. And other times you would have an idea. I was just wanting to know how we got that information to the route that had everybody. So thank you for answering my question. And that's it. And thank you.
And Ms. Ordway,
Thank you so
I
much.
would just add again, to echo what Mr. Miglerino said in the return to school report, that we will also use the digital recording for that as well when circumstances like that occur.
Again, thank you very much. And I know that these are odd times, but we are getting really good at odd time things. So thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple of quick questions. And I believe this should be for Mrs. Moffett. Is there a deadline set for parents who might want to choose online academy again instead of in-person learning? And if there is, what is it?
President O'Brien, no, there is no deadline yet set. We anticipate having one. Obviously, we're going to need that for staffing purposes. But no, we have not published one or identified one yet.
Okay. And I apologize if you've covered this material in the past, Dr. Zerbach. What is being done this spring regarding theater and choral events?
Well, Mrs. O'Brien, as far as the fine arts, many of the campuses are doing virtual events. Some campuses, though, are doing in-person events, so it would be campus dependent. If they do an in-person event, of course, they're using many of the mitigation measures in order to make sure that the event can take place safely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate all the information again this evening.
Mrs. O'Brien, we don't have any public comments for tonight.
Wonderful. We move on to consent agenda, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 6A through 6F, with the exception of pulling 6E for separate consideration.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. I have a motion for item 6E. You're on mute, Mrs. Ordway.
Okay, I would move that there we go. I would move that we approve consent agenda item 6E.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion items.
I had asked this be pulled for separate consideration just because I had a question. There's a $500,000 increase and it's for painting services. So I'm just curious, do we have a specific project? Did we just underestimate when we did the original approval? Or, I mean, because $500,000 is a significant jump. So do we have a project or was it just a miscalculation in our original estimate?
President Ordway, Ms. Fisher, thank you for the question. So originally the cooperative was approved back in June, anticipating the summer painting projects for the summer of 2021. We have always had $1.3 million in the 2019 bond for our weatherproofing, our interior and exterior painting. So yes, we do have several schools. We're doing exterior painting at Desert Sage, Greenbrier, Village Meadows, Mountain Shadows, Sierra Verde, and Stetson Hills. We'll be doing interior paint at Mountain Ridge High School, Deer Valley Middle School, Anthem Elementary School, Copper Creek, and Park Meadows. The request is to increase that to $1.5 million. The actual proposals that we have to do all of the schools that I just mentioned is actually just over $1.3 million, which is the allocation designated for the 2019 bond authorization for the building renewal project of what we refer to as weatherproofing.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out why it's such a large jump, but that makes total sense. Thank you.
President O'Brien, you are on mute.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. We'll move to action item 7A.
I move that the governing board accept the administrator's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
A second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
I would move that the governing board approve the proclamation declaring February Career and Technical Education Month in the Deer Valley Unified School District.
I second.
Is there any discussion or a report? Oh, there it is. Who will be giving our report this evening?
President O'Brien, I believe you will read the proclamation as we scan through this presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that reminder. All right. Should we vote? I think we need to vote first. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Hearing none. Whereas February 1st through 28th, 2021 has been designated Career and Technical Education Month by the Association for Career and Technical Education in Deer Valley Unified School District. And whereas Career and Technical Education offers students the opportunity to gain the academic, technical, and employability skills necessary for true career readiness. Whereas students in career and technical education programs participate in authentic, meaningful experiences that improve the quality of their education and increase their engagement and achievement. And whereas career and technical education provides students with career exploration opportunities earlier in their educational experience, enables them to make informed and beneficial decisions about their academic coursework and pursue established programs of study and career pathways. And whereas leaders from business and industry nationwide report increasing challenges related to addressing the skills gap and connecting qualified professionals with available careers in critical and growing CTE-related fields, including healthcare, energy, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, and informational technology. And whereas career and technical education prepares students for these and other fulfilling careers by offering integrated programs of study that link secondary and post-secondary education and lead to the attainment of industry-recognized credentials. And whereas career and technical education programs ensure that employers have access to a qualified and thriving workforce, ensuring America is a strong and competitive economy. For I, Ann O'Brien, Governing Board President of Deer Valley Unified School District, do hereby proclaim the month of February as Career and Technical Education Month. in Deer Valley Unified School District and urge all citizens to become familiar with services and benefits offered by the career and technical education programs in this community and to support and participate in these programs to enhance their individual skills and productivity. Thank you so much.
That was awesome.
That passed unanimously.
Okay, Mrs. O'Brien, can we move to 7C?
I think that would be an excellent idea.
Ooh, an excellent idea on a Tuesday. I would move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendations to approve the proposals from General Acrylics to replace all high school stadiums with artificial turf through cooperative contract 16M-GA12-1201.
I second.
Do you have any questions or discussion?
I have just a comment.
Yes, Mrs. Reed.
Thank you. And I've spoken to Dr. Finch about this, but in reading over the proposal, I am for us replacing the turf in all 5 high schools. I am not thrilled that we have to displace some of our spring sports in order to do that, especially since our spring sports were taken away from our students last year. And this is their opportunity to participate in those on their home field. I'm disappointed that we have to cut into that. So I know that there isn't a way to work around it, but I just wanted to just say that I'm sorry to those senior athletes that aren't able to finish out their seasons on their home field, and just am thankful for the other high schools that are accepting of our spring sports from the other schools. And I am hopeful that we will be able to solidify all of those field placements and the field rentals for the different community organizations that we already have contracts with. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
I just want to second what Ms. Reed said, because we are, kids just don't appear to be a priority lately, and it's very concerning. So hopefully we can still do something for the students, but that's it.
Just do want to verify with Mr. Miglerino that all of our student athletes will be completing their seasons.
President O'Brien, yes, in working with the athletic directors and our district athletic director, Mr. Warner, they're still working out details of what that's going to look like. So we don't have that all worked out, but there is just no physical way for us to complete this work without disrupting some part of the athletic season, whether it's in the spring or into the fall. And so it's not a preference for us to be able to disrupt the activities scheduled in the stadiums. But this short amount of pain will give us a long-lasting opportunity to have a lot more playability in the stadium in years to come. So we won't have to the challenges that we have with coordination now when the artificial turf is completed. And we did have a presentation. I don't want to belabor the point.
I apologize.
But I think the board has obviously seen the presentation because you're already commenting about it.
But anybody else, do we want to see the presentation or do you want to vote? Board members, if you could. Are we good to move forward? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miglerino, and I apologize for that. I did review the report and appreciate that work. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
We'll move to 7D. I would move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the job order contract to Sun Mechanical for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning retrofit at Constitution Village and Village Meadows Elementary School using Mojave Cooperative Contract 19F-SMC-0904.
I second.
Mr. Miglerino, this is you.
Just really quickly, President O'Brien and members of the board, Dr. Finch, just kind of a note on job order contracting, or what we refer to as JOC for short. It's an approved alternative delivery method to meet the procurement requirement, essentially allowing us to use a master contract to be able to do a specific project in which the scope would be defined. For this particular instance, it is to replace the air conditioning units at Constitution and Village Meadows schools. They are schools that have dated air conditioning units. They still operate with R22 Freon, which is now outdated, no longer available. So this would bring the units up to that standard. Whenever we choose a cooperative contract, we have to provide the justification. Sun Mechanical is the vendor that we chose for these two particular projects, and they have completed thousands of JOC contracts under their cooperative award. Most recently, they replaced the chillers for us at Boulder Creek High School and Sandra Day O'Connor High School. So we've chosen them for these projects because they also provided us with some creative suggestions of how that we could meet all of the requirements that we had, within the dollars that we had budgeted for these two schools. One thing that's worth noting, we're awarding this a little earlier than we would normally. This project is not scheduled to be completed until this summer, but due to the long lead time on getting equipment, if we don't approve this tonight, we likely will not be able to replace these units over the summer. Again, trying to create the least amount of disruption on the campus by doing the work over the summer. And I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Are there any board member questions?
I just have one comment, or maybe a question, I don't know. I know that these things are all pre-planned and what our schedules are. Do we have a master schedule of improvements and changes and whatnot that we could just kind of, is it somewhere? I don't want you to create it if it doesn't exist, but I'm just wondering if we have a schedule of maintenance and repairs and projects that maybe could just be in vibe if you have it. Do not recreate the wheel.
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, yes, we do have a schedule. What it really looks like, just to give you an idea, and it's on our Director of Facilities wall. It's about 10 feet long when you start talking about the number of facilities and the amount of square footage that we maintain. But it actually has the date of last improvement. And then we use that based on a life cycle analysis to be able to determine when something is scheduled to be replaced. We also take into consideration all the work orders for particular projects to be able to determine where we might have what we refer to as a pain point. Where we have something that's causing an issue, maybe prematurely, to see if it needs to be corrected and potentially with the bond dollars. Again, this project is one of the projects that's identified in the 2019 bond authorization. So.
Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Moving to 7E, I would move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the contract language for certified, administrative exempt, and deputy superintendent for the 2021-2022 school year.
I second.
And this comes to us from Mrs. Moffett.
Good evening, President O'Brien, governing board members. It's time for us to do our annual review of contract language with recommendations for the next school year. Procedurally, just a couple of reminders as we do have some new board members and a recap for all of our returning board members, that when we look at contracts, these are legally reviewed by Denise Lowell-Britt of Udall-Shumway. This language is revised, and I'm going to show you on the next slide. We took an approach this year in 3 ways, and this is because of feedback that we have received from the governing board over the last couple of years. First, of course, always is Denise takes a look, and so do we, for any basic changes in some wording. So when you reviewed contracts over the last few weeks, as I have sent them to you, you might have noted that she removed a word or she changed the word. Those are just basic things and don't necessarily have any huge implications. Date changes, of course, because the contracts will apply for the upcoming contract year, and we're always looking to improve clarity in the wording. You may also remember over the last couple of years, there were requests from the governing board that we try to keep language consistent from contract to contract if it applies to that particular employee group. So if it does, we do review each contract side by side to try and make those adjustments. And I will point those out as we go through the presentation today. And then we also will remove redundancy in the contract. You'll see in the deputy superintendent one, we had some redundancy that was removed. Or if there is non-applicable language, we remove that. And off the top of my head, I know that we did that in the certified contract this last time too. So we'll start first with the administrative exempt contract. There were a couple of things that we did here. I have that contract in front of me. I believe you guys, if you did not bring the marked up contract, you do have for you on attached to the board docs today, the clean version. So either will work for you. If you look under T or at T4, specifically here, T4 points out that if someone were to be arrested, that they would need to immediately report that to their supervisor. Well, also your employer is a critical element of reporting. So that's why Denise recommended that we also include human resources in that language. You'll see that in all contracts. And then we also, under M7, miscellaneous, number 7, added employee portal, because that is where our employees do find their contracts and do acknowledge their contracts is in our employee portal. It was a more generic and easy way to point out rather than only previous ways that we had done contracts prior to implementing that particular process. Some other things that we added, I mentioned that we try to be consistent with the language. So here you'll see that we added C7, and that is to be consistent with other contracts. Paycheck withholding language. Also, furlough was added to this specific contract. I believe it was listed in the teacher contract, but was not listed in the other two, so we made sure we updated that. Performance pay was updated. Conflict of interest also was updated in this contract, and non-assignability, which I believe only existed in the deputy contract, now exists in all contracts. And we'll move to the next slide for the deputy superintendent contract. If you reviewed this contract, you saw that there was quite a bit of change because of the consistency. So this board, members of this board, if you recall, a few years back spent a lot of time putting the deputy superintendent contract together. And so we tried to maintain a lot of that consistency and also update so that it reads like the other contracts do. So specifically, human resources was added just like I mentioned in the other contract. Employee portal was added for M7, And accumulated leave was revised under B2. So to be a little more specific for that section, when the board worked on this contract, I believe back in 2017, the language under B2 was very quite specific and was relevant to the employees that held the position at the time. So over time, we generalized that language, but it still did not include everything that it needed to. So we worked with Denise so that it accurately reflects the practice here in Deer Valley for any employee that might hold that position, rather than being so specific for one or two people. And then here are all of the areas that we worked to be consistent with the other contracts. Performance of duties was updated, compliance with law and policies, evaluation was updated, and I believe under evaluation, also annual was removed. I know we had a question regarding that, and that is because the contract is also annual. So one evaluation to each contract year. Maintenance of qualifications, failure to maintain qualifications, salary, mistaken salary, paycheck withholding, furlough, incidental food and beverage, continued employment, voluntary termination was updated, entire agreement, resignation, non-discrimination, and acceptance of contract. That seems like a lot, doesn't it? It's not that those things were not already in the contract all over comprehensively. It's just that they, again, were updated to look like the language in the other contracts. And then third, the certified contract. We did remove traditional academy language. If you recall from last year, we inserted a special clause because we opened the traditional academy, and those teachers that were hired on board had training obligations, and they were paid for that time, but we also included it specifically for in the contract. So that's removed because it no longer applies. And then additions for clarity, again, human resources was added to line 15. Non-discrimination moved to its own line. It used to reside under, let me see if I have that here. Non-discrimination, it was in kind of an odd place. I believe maybe in evaluation. Yep, at the back of evaluation in the previous contract. So a kind of an odd area. With the other two contracts, it was moved, it has its own line item. So we made sure that in this contract it did as well. And then we included conflict of interest, non-discrimination, and non-assignability to the certified contract. Important to point out that there are no huge statutory changes. There are none, actually, that drove any changes here in the contracts. No huge policy changes either. It's just continued refinement as we move year to year. And I'll take any questions that the board has.
Thank you, Mrs. Moffett. Do you have any questions, Mrs. Paperman?
I'm unmuted.
No questions, thank you.
Mrs. Reed?
I don't have any questions.
Mrs. Fisher, do you have any questions?
I do. Most of everything that I had noted has already been corrected in some of the contracts. But in the deputy superintendent contract, and there's just the only one that I can see that's, well, there's actually two. Under C3 and T1, I believe the dates need to be, the years need to be corrected. But then I have a couple of questions. Under C6, we talk about how the district shall not pay matching retirement contributions on behalf of the employee, but we do have an alternative contribution rate. So I would like to know, and I'm sure that we're covering at least a portion of that. I'd like to know, is this referring to something different than that? Because I know we don't cover the full Arizona State retirement that we would with a not return to work employee, but we do still have the alternative contribution rate. And how is that impacted by this line? Secondly, under D1, nope, sorry, not D1. I was ruffling through my papers and got them mixed up. So on the very, very first paragraph, maybe it is D1. On the very first paragraph, we did remove all the language where it talked about, we changed it to just be may assigned by the superintendent. And I know we had this discussed in the past as well. I believe that we need to put back in or board, because in the event that we have, we've had fellow district where the board, where the superintendent has just resigned, or we've had contracts, we've had obviously deaths throughout the nation. I do not wish any ill upon Dr. Finch, but we can't say what the future is going to bring. And so I do believe that we need to have at least or board added to that beginning line. In the event that something were to happen to our superintendent, or he decided to up and move to Nevada, like the guy from Paradise Valley, we need to be able to reassign it, or in the interim before we hire another superintendent. So there's those two. And then the other question I had was regarding B6. I think it's on the second page. Back in 2000, prior to 2017, the deputy superintendent contracts had not been before the board at all. And so that was why we, the board at that time, made sure to get the contracts before them. And at that time, there was a couple of board members that are no longer with us that were very, very vehement. They did not want the automobile allowance because we had removed it from the superintendent's contract. So at the time, we had adjusted their base so that they would basically be held harmless, so they would not suffer any reduction in their annual compensation. But as time has gone by and the contract has been, as I believe Ms. Moffitt said, adjusted to be more like the others, that automobile allowance was put back in. So we had 2 associate superintendents versus 4 that we have now. But was it adjusted, or did we just add a $5,000 raise at some point to those 2 individuals for that car allowance? And that's just a curiosity, because it could have even been done in 2018. I just looked at those 2 contracts. So those are my main questions, whoever can answer them, or concerns.
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, Jim's going to address a couple of these and then I will follow up.
President O'Brien and Ms. Fisher, I'll speak to the question regarding C6, which was the retirement contribution. And that clause is specifically in the language to make sure that employees would realize if they are already retired with ASRS, that we would not be providing them the standard contribution, which is matched by the district. The alternative contribution rate is paid by the district, and it is required by the guidance from ASRS. So we do have a provision, and it's listed on our hiring schedule, that we make adjustments to the salary offer to a return to work employee when they enter the system. And that's just to create some sort of parity between our phased employees, our phased retirement employees that retire that have served with Deer Valley and then go on our ESI program for phased retirement, and an employee that we may hire that had retired with another district, maybe a neighboring district. So I'll pause there to make sure that I answered that question correctly.
Are we paying the alternative contribution rate 100%, or do we have a 40-60 split? I know other districts, part of the benefit for having return to work retirees is that we can pay them an 80% salary, plus we could reduce our cost for retirement. So are we paying that alternative contribution rate at 100%?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, yes, the district is required to pay 100% of the alternative contribution rate as the guidance from the Arizona State Retirement System. But we pay it, it has to be paid by the employer. So I don't know if that was your question, but
No.
make an adjustment when we hire somebody. And so if they retire as an employee, let's say their last day of work was with Deer Valley, we would adjust their salary per our phased retirement plan. So in that case, 80% is what we offer them of their exiting salary or the beginning salary, whichever is greater. So we do adjust their salary. Likewise, if the person is hired initially with us, but is already retired with ASRS, we adjust for the alternative contribution rate in the initial offer that we give to them. So in fact, the district is paying the 100% of the alternative contribution rate, but the salary that is offered to the employee is adjusted, either whether they're part of our phased retirement plan or as an initial placement if they happen to be retired from a district other than ours.
Okay, so I do understand that we have to pay it to ASRS because there would be no other way for it to get to them. But I guess what I'm asking, and it may not even apply to our current 4 associate superintendents, but when that 1 year where they have to work through a different entity because they fall out of the 2020, did something change over the years, or do we still pay a percentage of that initial year? I understand you're saying that we reduce their salary based on that ACR if they're from a different district, but if it's an internal retiree, are we then paying the full percentage? Or do we, when we have that contract with that 1 year organization, do we have that? Is it considered in there as well?
President O'Brien, Ms. Fisher, the amount is adjusted as part of the phased retirement plan. So we offer them, again, 80% of their exiting salary or 80% of the beginning rate. And it remains that way even when we hire them back after the year that they're with the vendor, in this case, ESI. And so their salary amount is forever adjusted, and we pay 100% of the alternative contribution rate, which just for some context, it's about 10.21% right now, current year.
Okay.
If it's somebody that we actually hire from outside, we adjust their initial offer by the then ACR. The ACR does adjust from year to year, but for example, next year it's going to 10.22%, so it doesn't change dramatically over time.
Right. So when we're hiring them outside, do we reduce it by the ACR plus 80%, or are we paying them what we would pay a regular retiree or a regular employee, and we only reduce it by the ACR? I'm trying to figure out what our benefit to hiring a return to work retiree is, other than just experience, if we're not truly getting a reduction in the cost. I guess, or that might be a different, that might be a different.
I mean, you have to put it in the context of, we have what I would consider a severe labor shortage. So we're happy to fill vacancies right now, but the actual alternative contribution rate is 10.21%. And the actual matching contribution for a normal employee that qualifies for ASRS is over 12.2%. So there's already a savings just in what we would pay either from the matching or from the ACR. But we get an experienced person in which we're paying them the offered rate either at 80% for somebody who retires from us, and then we still pay the ACR. So basically we're paying 90.21% of their salary if you want to include the alternative contribution rate. So there's still almost a 10% savings. And likewise, we adjust anybody from outside just again for some parity with somebody that might retire from the Deer Valley School District. Okay, hearing no more comments about that, I'll speak quickly about the automobile allowance. And because I was here when that was, when those discussions took place, and when the contract was being written for the superintendent, the then superintendent, the automobile allowance was removed, and there was an all-inclusive amount that was provided, one amount for the contract that was offered to the superintendent. There was conversation about altering that for, at the time, they were associate superintendents. There's been some variations between associate superintendent and deputy superintendents, essentially the same positions. But the automobile allowance did not get changed for the deputy superintendents or associate superintendents at that time. So although the conversation did take place, it only was altered for the superintendent contract back several years ago.
I reviewed the 2017 contracts earlier today, and the automobile is not in there. Perhaps I reviewed the wrong ones.
You know where that's at.
Actually, I have the 2017, 2018 deputy superintendent contract in front of me, and the car allowance B6 is in the contract.
Okay, so I might have been looking at something different, because I know we discussed it, but it's like I said, it's 2017 versus 2021. And I am, gray kind of goes inward. So that's why I was trying to verify ahead of time. Thank you.
I understand. And we've answered all your questions?
Well, those are the questions on those two areas. I still, we do need to have some adjustments in the dates for the years, but I am still concerned with adding back in or board to line 1 of the contract in the event that something were to happen with our superintendent. I just believe there should be some safeguard in the contract because a contract should always consider the what if.
Yes, ma'am. I have that written down, and we'll go through the other board members' questions. And
okay, but that was it.
Okay. Mrs. Ordway.
I really don't have any questions. I've read these over and over again for the last 4 weeks, sent in my questions, had them answered. Concerns have been brought up. If someone could answer, maybe Jim, you'd answer this one, to Mrs. Fisher's question, if indeed something were to happen to a superintendent, who, without the line and or board being in there, but where would the responsibility lay?
I'll jump in here and answer that one, because obviously that's my chair. What happens in that scenario?
Hey, Dr. Finch, I'm sorry.
And names a deputy superintendent as the superintendent. That's how it's done throughout the country. And the alternative, one of the pluses, I guess, of being a larger district, we have deputy superintendents that could fulfill that role. So usually the board president calls a meeting, and then the district moves on until they have a meeting, and then they name the interim to fulfill the remainder of the contract or whatever deal they want to work on. But usually it's the board then names an interim superintendent.
Thank you. And Dr. Finch, I can't see your face and I see Jim, so I apologize for not asking you specific.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. Mrs. Reed, do you have any, I know I've already asked you if you had any questions. Do you have any thoughts or comments regarding the suggestion to add or board to D1?
I think that with what Dr. Finch has said, as far as if something were to happen where the superintendent was unable to fulfill his responsibilities, that the board would make the decision to have an interim superintendent who would then fulfill the obligations of the contract. So I'm good with how it is.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Paperman, do you have any thoughts?
I agree with Dr. Finch, so I have no questions.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Paperman. And Mrs. Fisher, I just want to go back to clarify something on the deputy superintendent contract for section T1. You said that the dates need to be corrected, and I was trying to find which dates you thought need to be corrected.
Yes.
And
I'm sorry, it's C3. I did say T1 because I have it highlighted, but it's actually C3, still has 1920 and 2021 school years versus the 21-22.
okay, yes, I did find the C3 date corrections that needed to be fixed.
I just happened to have it highlighted and but no, that was
okay,
fine.
But T1 is good. Okay. So, Mrs. Moffett, can you help us out with what dates need to be there in C3, because this is for a vote this evening?
Yes, what you could do is just in your motion, point out that C3, everything should be moved forward 1 year.
Okay, or corrected for the current year. Would that work too? That language be corrected for the current year, the dates in C3? Oh, Mrs. Moffett froze for me.
Yes, President O'Brien, she said that would be acceptable.
Awesome. Does someone want to make an amendment to the motion to correct the dates in the deputy superintendent contract for section C3?
So we will go with the motion to approve this with the changes in dates in section C3 to be current school year dates. Is that correct? Yes. And that would be the motion, the amended motion.
In a second.
I second.
Okay. All those in, is there any more discussion on the contracts? Seeing none, all those in favor to approve the deputy superintendent contracts, the certified contracts, and the administrative contracts with the one change to section C3 for deputy, please say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
The motion is passes 4-1. Governing board reports this evening. I'm going to start this evening. First of all, thank you to the Deer Valley Education Foundation, again, for sponsoring our Teachers of the Year and Rookies of the Year. It was very exciting to get to see the presentations this evening. Appreciate all the sponsors who help with that. In addition, I attended the Arizona School Boards Association had their first board orientation and leadership training seminar last month. The session on open meeting law reminded me that during our superintendent reports, that the members are able to ask questions. However, we may not have any discussion. So Dr. Finch can't answer the questions during the meeting, as only agendized items can be discussed, but the questions can be answered later after the meeting via email or in a board update. And additionally, it has been a long time. I'm being reminded that we needed to go back and do another vote. I apologize. on.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mrs.
Yes.
We needed to vote on the amendment first and then the main motion.
Yes, so we voted for the amendment and then we are now going to vote on the full motion as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The motion passes 4-1. Apologize for that technical difficulty.
Is it going to come up in board docs secondly again? Or are we good to go? She can just adjust it?
I think she can vote for us electronically, but she will record our votes electronically.
Yeah, it just hadn't popped up, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate that. So additionally, was also reminded again, governing board members do give our reports, and we are allowed to report on site visits, governmental relations, conferences, meetings, as well as agenda item requests. And much like the superintendent's report, because these aren't necessarily agendized items, we can not discuss them. So I think it's important for those who are watching the meetings and aren't necessarily aware of open meeting law. It's not that we don't like each other or don't want to answer questions. It's just that we all don't want to be fined for violating open meeting law. So that was a good reminder. Additionally, there is another BOLTS session on February 12th, which is this Friday. And topics range from open meeting law to board superintendent relations, how to manage expectations in these unprecedented pandemic times, social media, advocacy, and then some budgeting as well. Earlier this evening, I attended the Arizona School Boards Association Black Alliance meeting where there was discussion about forming a scholarship, and also quite a lengthy discussion on how to ensure boards and districts are receiving feedback from all parents and guardians, especially those with no access to technology. It seems, we live in a world of email and technology, and so there was quite a bit of concern for some of the community members who don't necessarily have access to that. So that was a lengthy conversation. The National School Board Association Equity Conference is tomorrow. It is virtual. Looking forward to that. And then finally, I wanted to talk about the Arizona Promise program that is Senator Paul Boyer's bill. It is SB 1508. And it is a bill that would offer scholarships to students that have a minimum 2.5 GPA, graduate from high school, an Arizona high school. The importance of this is not that everybody has to go to college, but the value of a degree, of a 4-year degree, it is substantial. The percentage difference in median wages between Arizonans with a bachelor's degree and peers with a high school degree is about $23,000 difference. So I'm going to ask Ms. Taylor to share some information that I received from some folks from the Arizona Board of Regents regarding this bill for my fellow board members to look at. And with that, I would have Mrs. Paperman. Do you have a board report tonight?
Yes, I do. Thank you for today's presentation. I would like to inform that the community, I don't know if any other board members are being in contact with the community regarding to the return school safety, even on my own property. The famous question that they ask, who makes the decision? I know as a new board member at my first meeting, I had no clue what the process is. I know in my district, Peoria, the governing boards they vote for this. So I did not know that this came from the district or superintendent. So I just wanted to clarify that to the community. But I also believe that we don't know, we don't anticipate the future. You know, we hope that with the vaccine, yes, things are going down, but, you know, is this going to, you know, what's going to happen next year? You know, is it going to mutate? So I truly believe that this burden should not be put on Dr. Finch. The governing board were elected by the people. So if anyone is going to have resentments or anger, you know, let it be on the governing board, not on the superintendent, or the staff having resentment on the superintendent, where superintendent and staff need to build that relationship. So I would like to request a resolution regarding the COVID-19 that was adopted on July 14, 2020, which I looked at it, to be brought back for discussion and consideration as an action item. So I did look at the BEDBA. So I understand that a policy ensures that that an item will be put on the agenda if two board members request the agenda on them. So I would like to know if there are any other board members interested to bringing this item back. Since the community, you know, I don't know if anyone else is being contacted. I'm doing this on behalf of the community.
I'll second the request.
Is that all you have to report, Mrs. Paperman?
Yes, and so I would like to thank the community because I know I had individuals come to my property, which I did not know, you know, that people can find your address. They thanked me and I said, well, the governing boards are, you know, we're trying our best, but I will bring this up at the end as an action item and also thank them for voting for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Paperman. I have your agenda request on noted and Mrs. Fisher's support for it as well. Mrs. Fisher?
I actually have a couple of things. Of course, as always, until we go back to in person, I want to thank Daniel McCarthy and the Patriot Party for sponsoring us a location to meet from. And again, I need to request as a open board agenda item, not a training, a discussion of this board of 5 for policies BBA, BCA, BHC, BHD, BIA. If any other board members would support us having an open discussion, I would appreciate their support in that as well. I understand that the superintendent and the board president have offered a training on these policies in general, I'm thinking, and on open meeting laws, and I do support anybody attend a training that they may or may need. However, I'm not requesting a training. I'm requesting that this board of 5 members have a public discussion where our supervisors, which is the public, can observe the discussion. So that's my request. Then I wanted to express some concern. We read these Friday updates that we get, and I was very concerned when I read that there was a support to maintain additional or excessive administration while parking our progress in special education. It took 4 years to even get an evaluation of our special education programs. And I tried to do my due diligence. I went back, I looked at the report that the board was given in 2014 the January of 2020, the progress that had occurred so far or to date. And it seemed to be majority of progress was towards training adults, training teachers, including the MTSS language or labels. But I didn't see a significant amount of impact for the most important, which is our students. And now to read that we want to maintain excess administration because we are becoming the administrative place to be, while we are not becoming the place for our special needs students to be. I have repeatedly received concerns, especially in our transition from junior high to high school. The kids are given a blanket schedule that is most beneficial for the school to administrate, but may not meet the needs of the students. There's other concerns that have been brought to my attention, and so I'm highly concerned that we would prioritize administration above our children, and especially above our special needs children, who I know that the school district and the teachers and the counselors and the speech therapists, I know they've done their best, but speech therapy over Zoom is not the same. Services over Zoom is not the same. And we are already going to have our children at a deficit. I do not think we should be backburnering our special needs improvements, especially not over administration. So I would like some kind of a report of what we're going to do to help bring our kids forward. My fear is that we're already going to have deficits for our typical children, but special needs children even more so. I know my son has not missed a single speech therapy through the whole pandemic. Therapists have come to my home and they've still done all of his therapies. My habilitators have continued to come. And I'm thankful for that. But I also know that not everybody has that option. There are some people who have other extenuating circumstances that prevent them from having that. So I would like to know a greater status of what that's going to be. So I don't know if that's an agenda thing or just a Friday update. Give us a little bit more information, what's happening with our special education students and what they are bringing forward. Secondly, I am a little concerned that when I read, if you read our board policy on the duties of the board president, our board president is definitely supposed to help build our agenda with the superintendent. They're to preside over our meetings, consult with the superintendent, encourage and maintain orderly, keep all discussions factual, allow for full and complex exploration, and act as vice president. And I know Ms. O'Brien will do the best job possible, and I actually support what she does 99% of the time. But when we put in a request, part of the reason in the policy that BED, BA, that Ms. Paperman had mentioned earlier, part of the reason it says if 2 or more board members request an agenda item, it will be placed on the agenda within 60 days. And part of the reason that is there is because in the 2015-2016, our board president basically felt he was a board of one and would regularly shut out all board members when they made requests. I do not believe that is Ms. O'Brien's intent. However, I am concerned that it's occurring with encouragement from the superintendent. We are repeatedly being told, if you want to talk, you have to only talk to the board president. If you want to have a question, send it to the board president. I'm sorry, but we need to start working as a board of 5. And all board members should be respected. And so It's just a concern I have, and I hope we can address it at some point. So, other than that, I want to thank, I was traveling last week to a death in the family. My stepfather passed away, and I did receive many condolences and support from our community, and I do want to thank them for that, especially the ones who went on my son's page and messaged my son because he took it very hard. So I do want to thank them for that, and that's it for my board report.
Mrs. Reed?
I'll start out and just send a shout out and a special thank you to all of our school counselors. We just wrapped up National School Counselor Week, and I know how hard each of you work, and you go above and beyond, and so many times take your work home with you and utilize resources that sometimes I don't even know where you find them in order to do the best that you can and serve your students and their families. So thank you for always going above and beyond. Also would like to say thank you to the volunteers and the sponsors at the shot clinic that we held last week. I know that was a big feat just to pull that off. So thank you for doing that. Just a congratulations to our senior athletes who participated in National Signing Day last week. Congratulations to you, and that's one of the things that we talk about at Deer Valley is promoting lifelong learners and graduating them to the next level. So we're proud of you and hope to continue to watch you do what you love over the next 4 years. Thank you to Deer Valley Education Foundation for sponsoring our Teachers of the Year, and congratulations to our amazing Teachers of the Year last board meeting and this board meeting being recognized, and we look forward to that final recognition next board meeting. Just looking forward to the DVEF golf outing that's coming up in a few weeks. I know that because of COVID, things had to change a little bit, but I know that that's going to be a successful event, and I look forward to seeing the amazing things that they do with that. As far as Mrs. Fisher's comment about special education and administration, I don't know what board report she was referring to, but that's certainly not the assumption that I have when it comes to administration versus special education. I'm a special ed mom as well, so ensuring that our students receive the services that they're supposed to receive and meet all of their IEP requirements is extremely important to me. At the same time, there's not a comparison about choosing special ed over administration. It's important that we have really good qualified administrators as well. The same as we have really great qualified teachers, special ed and regular teachers. So those are things that I don't think we have to pick and choose about. I do have the privilege of sitting on the City of Phoenix's homelessness task force, and I am the only community member that has a background in education also. So the only one that is being the voice of the public school districts and advocating for all of the resources that public school districts already provide our homeless students and their families. So I'm excited to represent this lens when we talk about what the City of Phoenix plans to do and how it plans to address that. So if anybody has any comments or concerns or questions or ideas about the direction that the City of Phoenix is taking homelessness, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to take those concerns and to share them with our team that's putting that together. So thank you.
Mrs. Ordway.
I appreciate everyone's report, and I wanted to wrap the evening up by saying thank you to everyone that's been supporting our community, and our community is built around our students. It is an awesome thing to be able to provide the opportunities for the vaccines, not only for our employees, but for others that were in the vicinity. I know that Boulder Creek was a little less crowded than Barry Goldwater, but to know that we are playing an integral part in getting to the point where might be able to give you a hug again. I know everyone's looking forward to that. Is very exciting to me. But to listen to employees talk about how excited they were to be able to get the shot, whether they like shots or not, they knew that they were playing a very important part. So we actually made it a little bit easier. I'm happy for those that got it earlier, but it's an important thing. I did notice that a couple of pictures of preschoolers that had the coolest masks on. Adorable. And for our preschoolers and our kindergartens at this point in time, they know no different than to wear their mask and just go about their day. So at some point in time, way down the road, I'm guessing, we'll all have these great collection of masks and say, I wore that one. So staff, students especially, but community members, you are appreciated, and together we will get this licked. So thank you very much.
Dr. Finch, your superintendent report.
I also want to spend my time thanking Dr. Z and Val. They were the tip of the spear, getting those two machines rolling up north and down south here. It was quite incredible to watch. His scouting came in handy when he went to other districts and learned what worked, what didn't work. And as he mentioned in his report, about 1,500 people showed up, and many of them from other districts. So very proud of what the team pulled off. The whole machine, the Deer Valley machine, helped pull that off. But I just want to thank Dr. Z publicly because obviously he was the tip of the spear. And if it wasn't going to go, or the tip of the syringe, but it wasn't going to go well, we were going to hear about it. So thanks to all his work, and Val was a critical part of that as well. So give them a virtual high five if you run into them again, because that was a Herculean feat to pull that off. So that goes under other duties as assigned. And you didn't notice that, it's on the bottom of the deputy superintendent contract. Last but not least, I want to thank Ms. O'Brien for organizing ASBA training. We can never get enough of that, and that's a good opportunity for us to ask questions from the experts, and so we can avoid stepping in open meeting law violations, that kind of stuff. So thanks for setting it up with ASBA, as she has a connection with those folks, and so we appreciate always learning more as a board and as a superintendent. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. As it relates to number 9 on the agenda, future meeting dates and events, I would like to clarify that the email everybody received regarding the March 30th ASBA training on open meeting law and board policy, I erroneously omitted that it would also be a discussion, and that discussion would actually be specifically on the board policies originally requested by Mrs. Fisher at the first January meeting. It will not be generic board policies. It will be specific to the, I believe, 5 or 6 that she requested. It would be a starting point to have our ASBA trainer there to guide us through that and have any discussion for that. So if you could please let Mrs. Taylor know if you are available for that time and date so we could get it locked in. I would greatly appreciate that. Otherwise, our future dates are posted, and I would entertain a motion for adjournment at 9:35.
I don't want to cut you off, but I'd like to move that we adjourn our meeting at 9:36.
Ms. O'Brien, before we adjourn, can I clarify, my request is not that we have a discussion in a board training. My request is that we have a review and discussion in a public meeting where the public can view what is discussed. That is my request.
The public will be able to view that. All meetings are open meetings with 5 board members.
Okay, so I would like to say as a new board member, I know Ken Fisher mentioned reviewing policies. I would like to second that. I would like to us to be doing that. Thank you.
On an actual agenda. Thank you.
Do I have a second for an adjournment?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.